Hello, and welcome to today's Leadership Alliance Virtual Professional Development Series Wednesday Workshop on Cultivating Resilience. My name is Dr. Jane Indorf, and I'm the Assistant Director of Undergraduate and Graduate Programs with the Leadership Alliance. I'll be your moderator for today's session. We're thrilled to have you join us today for our final Wednesday workshop of our 2025 VPD series. Thanks so much for being here with us today. So for those of you who are joining us live, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen to ask questions during today's session. And please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We really love to know who is participating with us live. I also wanted to thank those who submitted questions ahead of time. That really helps us to formulate and decide what we're going to talk about, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. All right. So I'm going to be cheesy for a moment. Let's be honest. College life and grad school, they're not exactly a peaceful stroll through the park. They're more like a rugged hike with surprise weather changes, questionable trail maps, and occasional raccoons or bears rummaging through your backpack. It's not easy. So today we're going to be talking about resilience, which is what helps us to bounce back from these stressors, helps us adapt to change and stay grounded in our goals, both academically and personally. So for today's session, we're joined by 3 experienced leaders in academia who support students and academics with motivation, mentorship, transitions, persistence, identity, and community, which are all factors that are related to resilience. So without further ado, let's get started with introducing our speakers. I will keep this as brief as possible, but our speakers have awesome backgrounds. So today we're joined by Dr. Alexandra Kuvaeva, Dr. Jawanda Grant, and Asya Spears. So Alexandra was born and raised in a small town in Russia. She completed her first degree in linguistics, which gave her the opportunity to learn English, Spanish, German, Finnish, and Chinese. She pursued another degree in economics and management and received a Fulbright Award to study for a master's degree at the University of Maryland, College Park. A trailblazer, Alexandra's the first and the only one in her family to study, work, and live abroad, navigating the academic and career path in a foreign country and a non-native language. She experienced many of the challenges faced by underrepresented communities. Alexandra has over 15 years of experience in higher ed research, quantitative and qualitative data collection and analysis, measurement, statistics, and evaluation. During her doctoral studies at the University of Maryland, she provided methodological and analytical support to the Advanced Program for Inclusive Excellence, which is an NSF-funded campus-wide initiative to promote institutional transformation in the retention and advancement of women faculty in STEM. As a postdoc at the University of Maryland, she coordinated research activities for another NSF-funded project in the Department of Psychology that focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion in faculty tenure evaluation and promotion. Now she is working as a postdoc fellow in the Lambert Lab at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, where she's contributing to research on mentorship in STEM with an extra M for medicine, and developing resources to help underrepresented trainees in those fields thrive. Next, it is my pleasure to introduce Asya Spears. Asya is the founder of Rose Data Studio and a PhD candidate. As the founder of Rose Data Studio, she designs learning experiences that help students and professionals translate data into action and build careers that reflect their values. She brings experience as a statistical consultant, research program manager, and curriculum developer for universities and public health organizations. She holds a BS degree in math from Spelman College, a master's degree in biostatistics from UCLA, and is currently completing her PhD in policy analysis at the Pardee Rand Grad School, where her research explores how Black women navigate non-degree pathways into data careers. Her work centers on access, agency, and alignment, 3 things that she hopes you'll walk away with today after our session. And now I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Jawanda Grant, who is a seasoned leader in education and workforce development and is dedicated to empowering individuals through educational and career transitions. Dr. Grant has successfully managed numerous programs aimed at enhancing access to STEM fields and other highly competitive opportunities. She holds a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences and a Bachelor of Science degree in chemical engineering. She's also made a distinct pivot to an impactful career in education administration. Dr. Grant has a proven track record in guiding students, faculty, and postdocs through their leadership and career journeys. Her expertise in program design, grant management, and community cultivation and change management equipped her with the unique ability to navigate the complexities of career transitions. As a passionate advocate for educational equity and professional development, Dr. Grant is committed to helping participants unlock their potential and approach career changes with confidence through personal reflection, storytelling, and intentional networking. Wow, what amazing backgrounds and stories you all have. So now we are going to start the workshop portion of our session, and then we will switch modes into a Q&A. So I'm going to hand over the pretend microphone to Alexandra.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I would like to start with, hi everyone. I would like to start with saying that the phenomenon of resilience has been studied for quite a long time, since 1970s. And over the years, this research has evolved to recognize multiple factors that play a role at the individual, family, community, and cultural levels. And as you look at these 2 words, cultivating resilience, I encourage you to think about what associations come to your mind. So my first degree was in linguistics, and it really shaped my love for the language and its use. And I also like to visualize things. It helps to conceptualize. So when I think about the resilience part, I imagine the process of tempering steel that makes it less brittle, hardens it. And the steel is a person, and the high temperatures used in the treatment process are the life adversities that are supposed to make the person stronger. But we are all different, and we all react to the same adversities in different ways. So we all have our personal qualities that are to some extent innate and genetically predisposed, affected by our early life experiences and by the level of social support and environment. And this is really where the cultivating piece comes into play. So when I think about the cultivating part, what comes to my mind is nurturing and nourishing and helping grow. And I imagine those crops that farmers cultivate and all the conditions they create to help them grow: soil, water, light, fertilizers, and so on. So it's something really the opposite of those high temperatures that are used to harden the steel, but in fact, you do need both. It's the nature and the nurture. And the adversities in life are those experiences that test you if you can survive and come out stronger and more assertive, but also wiser, kinder, and more empathetic. And you do need the cultivation piece to help you go through those experiences. You need to learn to cultivate those coping mechanisms to make it through. And you need to build your network of support that you can turn to in those moments. You need people who can help you navigate through those milestones and challenging terrains in your life. And we can call them mentors, but not just one mentor, a network of them. Because you can get all types of support from just one person. And they can be your family, friends, colleagues, therapists, job supervisors, peers. They don't have to be your lifelong mentors, because our life goals and our short and long-term goals, they may change, and we may find ourselves in situations we never had to deal with before. And this is a dynamic process. We need to learn how to navigate it. So the truth is, you can't do it all by yourself. But you do need to be in charge of the process. And I can't stress enough the importance of you taking the responsibility and being proactive and initiating and maintaining the process. And as you start building that network, remember that No one is more invested in your success than you, and achieving your goals requires your initiative. So, how do you start building your support network of mentors? You start with self assessment. So, first, you need to identify what goals you have, life goals, long term, short term, and break them down. Make them feasible to envision and achieve. And some of the questions may help you as you go through the process of identifying those goals. And once you set your goals, reflect on your needs. Ask yourself, what are the gaps that you need to fill in? What kind of support or resources will help you do it? And don't expect other people or your mentors to fully understand or anticipate your needs. It's your responsibility to be proactive and shape that relationship to serve your growth. Not every door will open, but some will do. And there are people out there who want to support you, but they may also need your guidance to do so. And to guide others in helping you get to your goals, first, you need to have a clear understanding yourself why you need those goals. So, the next question to ask is ask yourself, what is the why? Um, as you think about your goal, ask yourself why you wanted that goal and be honest. Try to understand what truly motivates you. So there are internal motivation, such as purpose, curiosity, meaning, passion. And it has been shown to help you persist to a much greater extent than external motivation. So when you think about your goals and what you want to accomplish, think about are they internal, are they external, are they influenced by your parents, peers, teachers, mentors, classes you took in college, or impact you observed in other people's lives, or any other reasons. And remember that for all of your life and career and research goals, one mentor is not going to be enough. And traditionally, we perceive that mentorship as a dyadic or one on one structure. But these days, we have alternatives. And you can and you should seek out mentors outside of your program and institution, outside of your current network. They can serve diverse roles such as coach, connector, sponsor, peer, identity mentor, and many more. And there is no time to cover all the strategies and tools, but I would like to share this free online course at the bottom of this page on building your mentoring network. My team and I have recently developed that in partnership with the National Research Mentoring Network platform. And this may be just one aspect of your coping strategies, but hopefully it will help you have a better control over your life and career.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. So I'll move into my piece next, and I'm speaking from being in the midst of working on my dissertation. And so as I was reflecting on my journey, I thought about three pivots that helped me define a new North Star. And what I mean by that is these are moments where I responded to change. And so resilience is all about how capable are you of responding to change when it comes up? How do you show your adaptability, your capability to pivot, to keep moving forward, even if maybe forward looks different than it did before, whatever action happened. And so for me, I have three different actions that have happened throughout the last, what, I guess about 10 years now for me in my journey. And so here they are. So, the first one I want to talk about is changing PhD programs. The second is having a baby in my third year of my new PhD program. And then the third is taking a leave of absence from that PhD program. I'm really glad that Alexandra just shared about the networks because one thing that changed when I changed programs and also when I became a parent and also when I took a leave of absence is that I needed to add new people to my network. So for example, with having a baby, I had to think about what is it like for parents in 2018, 2019 to work or to be going to school. And so what my new North Star started to look like was really a vision of my career thriving and a vision of my kid thriving. And I had to figure out, well, what resources do I need to do that? Who do I know that's done something similar, whether they're inside academia or outside of academia? And so my network and my possibility model of what I can be and how I can achieve it has continued to expand over time. That also changed going back to when I changed PhD programs. I went from the PhD in biostatistics program, I got my master's there, and I found this great opportunity in policy analysis. Part of how I did that was through networking, through doing a summer research program at Rand for PhD students, and recognizing that they had a graduate school and that I loved the work that they did. And that actually seemed like it might be a better fit for me than biostatistics. And so through conversations, I was able to figure out that I could bring my fellowship with me. I had a Ford Foundation fellowship, which is sadly no longer an active program at the predoctoral level. But I was able to bring that fellowship with me. I wasn't able to bring any credits with me, but it was great to know that because I knew statistics, that those classes would be a lighter lift for me than some of the econ classes that I was not familiar with. I had only taken a very introductory economics course, but I made it through. I made it through quals. But I think for me, when I think about resilience, the first time someone called me resilient was actually in high school. And so I think one of the things that they might have noticed at that time, I was a military, always once a military kid, always a military kid. But every time I moved somewhere new, I think I had 8 different schools between kindergarten and 12th grade. I had to figure out, I had to find my way. And so I think all of these things that have happened in graduate school are a continuation of that. So after I had my baby, I recognized the challenge of trying to sustain going to class, getting research done, and standing up a dissertation project, as well as navigating teething and sleep deprivation, and really, having to do my best to work within the hours of daycare or to manage when my kid was sick. It was a lot, and I didn't really know what to do other than to focus on what felt most important to me at the time, which was being a parent. And so I talked with my advisor, read my student handbook. I saw that I could take 3 years without having to reapply or take the GRE again. And so that's what I did. I got work in my field. So that's actually how I ended up starting my business. But the experience of going on the non-academic job market and bringing my data skills with me showed me that there were just a few extra skills I needed. And so that is actually what led me to my dissertation topic by focusing on courses like Coursera or other non-degree ways to learn skills. People are able to start careers in fields like data science. And so what kind of looked like a turn off the road really led me back to the work that I'm using to finish my degree now. And so I say all that to say that I would encourage you to look for the opportunity in every challenge. But I want to talk next about some things that really sustain me with even being able to see the opportunity. Because let's be honest, like as Jane said, it can feel stressful when you start to think, or maybe even shameful, when I start to think, oh man, my whole cohort is going to graduate and I'm still going to be here. I'm still here. I'm fine. They're rooting for me. Yes, my time to degree has looked a little bit different, but I'm so proud of myself for coming back. And I'm so excited that I'm doing work that I care about and that I had an opportunity to get 2.5 years of work experience while I was on my leave. I'm proud of the relationship that I have with my daughter. I'm proud of how I take care of myself. And so on the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about what's sustaining me right now as I am working through my dissertation. So these are 3 things, but the overarching topic is restorative practices and community support. So I know some questions came in around burnout. I have adopted very intentional restorative and recovery practices so that I I don't ed into that territory. I will say though, flu season is just a really hard one. That always tend like by the time we come out of that, it's challenging. But some things that are helping me right now. The first is my dissertation support group. So I have a dissertation coach and we also have a group. So we all are cheering each other on. I'm getting the support I need, especially because I was trained as a quantitative researcher for so long and I'm doing a qualitative dissertation. So I am developing a new scholarly identity. I'm evolving and I need support with people who really get that and can see me and support me through that. The next is my data community. So that's my network that I cultivated a little bit before COVID, but very much during COVID. I was very active on LinkedIn. And so I've had a very smooth data collection process. I'm doing interviews and I'm aiming to speak with 40 Black women who have moved into the data field. That has gone very well. I only need 3 more interviews, and I've been doing them for about 7 weeks now. And that I'm just really happy that because people know who I am and know what I do, that they were very much willing to share the flyer and help spread the word. And then the thing that I think is a huge foundation to it all is physical and mental wellness. That helps me make much more clear decisions. And sometimes it can be disappointing if I realize, man, I really need a break or I really need to go sit down somewhere or just I shouldn't be as active or moving around as much. There's times where I realize I had been depleted and I needed to have, even more recovery time. And that really looked like, going to therapy weekly instead of bi-weekly. That looked like just starting small with things, going out on walks, maybe for 20 minutes rather than for an hour, just to make sure I get out of the house. And so there may be times where you have to break things down into bite-sized pieces, even though you're like, well, I could walk 4 miles. Well, maybe your body and your mind are asking you to just go out for 15 or 20 minutes. Maybe you can add more over time. But maybe there's something else that your body needs. I made a promise to myself that I was going to graduate healthy and happy, and I'm really proud to say that I am on track to do that. And so, as I close out my portion, I want to share some things that I would love for you to walk away with. In addition to some of these thoughts around what sustains your deep work and what allows you to return to, studying and focusing and concentrating, what things do you need to do outside of that? Here are some resources that have helped me with kind of figuring this out for myself. And so I have a QR code to a list on Bookshop where you can read more about the summaries for these books. And I also have my QR code for LinkedIn. I'd love for you to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And so I'll start with this quote I found from Michelle Obama that says, "Don't ever make decisions based on fear. Make decisions based on hope and possibility." I will caveat that by saying sometimes you are just afraid, and that happens. The fear is there. The idea, though, is just not to let fear be in the driver's seat. It may be in a passenger, and you're like, "Hey, there you are. Okay, thanks for giving me the signal. Thanks for that feeling. Thanks for letting me know that this something has come up, but I still get to make the decision. I'm still in charge here." And so what I've hoped to have been able to share is just what do different possibilities look like to shift where you may be going, to stay true to just being kind to yourself. So the kindness method was a really important book for me to really improve my self-talk. And one of the tools in the kindness method is this. There's lots of different maps and worksheets that you fill out. And one that you can fill out is called Ways That I Am Proud to Be. And I always get a little emotional when I talk about that one because it's like, oh, wow, what are the things that you really love about yourself? What are the characteristics that you admire within yourself? The second book is called The Power Pause. So this just came out, I think, earlier this year. And I got it from my library and started reading, and I have the audiobook as well. But this is about how to plan a career break after kids and come back stronger than ever. And so it really, again, talks about different possibilities for how you may think about a season in your life where you're more focused on caregiving. And this could also, caregiving could apply in other ways to relatives and other caregiving responsibilities that you may have, even outside of kids. And then the final one is the Rest Deck by Trisha Hersey. And so I was given this deck at a conference I attended, and it's just such a wonderful tool to, again, reflect on what foundation do I need to come back to after I've spent time in my uh, books, in my doing lit reviews, all the things. What do I need to come back to? How am I caring for myself and resting? And so, with that, I will hand it over to Jawanda. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much. I'm taking notes from them, so I know everybody on the other end has lots of notes. Um, I am Dr. Jawanda Grant, and a lot of my students call me Dr. J, so you're welcome to call me by Dr. J. I am also really excited. I have to put a plug in for the Leadership Alliance for continuing to hold this space for mentorship and for your development as research scholars and future leaders. So I give them kudos for doing it, and also you kudos for showing up to invest in yourselves. So what you see here, I would like to at least have you indulge me for a second in a rapid fire version of a community building activity that I usually do with students, often known as two truths and a lie, but I call it two truths and a tale. If you grew up in my generation and in some households, lie was a bad word. So in case my mom is watching, I think she might, it's two truths and a tale. So the way it goes is I share three things about me, two are truths and one is a tale. The list is in front of you on the bottom of the screen, but I'll also color this with a little intel on some of the pictures. My slide deck is mostly pictures. As you heard Jane mention in my intro, storytelling is a part of what I will integrate here, and I'll tell you how I think you can use it at some point. But what I would like to share is that I love sunsets. And so those photos are pictures I took on some walks. And just like Asia just mentioned, while I needed to unplug or power down. I also have a fur baby Levi, which is one of the reasons I take long walks because he has lots of energy. Um, and I also just love nature and fresh air. So the walks are really good for me as well. I also have logos of my alma maters here. I'll talk about my education in the next slide. There's a picture of my first professional office building, the Thompson Memorial Library at Vassar College. It's kind of small block on the left there. It's ranked one of the top most beautiful college libraries in the US. Why I included it also is I had not so long before left my postdoc, and many of you, if you are in research environments, and particularly wet bench labs, they are often in basements with no windows. And so I was excited to be in a beautiful building, but that had many windows and lots of sunlight. And last, on the left side, one of the photos is a article featuring the work of my nonprofit Celebrate Sisters Foundation, co-founded with my sister. On the right is a picture from a recent, most memorable and transformative trip to Ghana, where I had the opportunity and privilege to speak at various schools. And so these are things that are about me, but really quickly in the chat, I may not even tell you which one is right, but which one do you think is the tale that are listed here? Is it that I was on a Grammy nominated recording in college, that I played the violin, or that I have a twin sister, Jalarna? Which one do you think is the tale? I'm looking to see what comes in here. And I'll keep going and let you keep populating that. All right, so as I mentioned, I would tell you a little bit about my education. So, and everything in here is in order as it should be on your resume and CV in reverse chronological order. So I started my education in Mississippi at the University of Mississippi with my bachelor's in chemical engineering. I have my PhD in pharmaceutical sciences, so I did biomedical research there, and you can see photos from both. While I was at the University of Mississippi, I actually started undergraduate research, so I think it is so important to be engaged in that space, and that's what helped me bridge that transition to graduate research. And then I moved on to New York University for a postdoctoral fellowship. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight here is that I see degrees as tickets. They give you access to opportunities. While it is important and helpful to align your degrees with your desired career paths, as you have heard, even most recently by our dear Asia, things change and your interests change. So do not feel like it's a waste. That's the one thing I will say is it is an investment. It is now providing you with a foundation on which you can build as a lifelong learner. So we are all lifelong learners. You can build on whatever those degrees are that you're working on, even with the changes and pivots that may come. So another aspect of the threads in my life and my career has been teaching, mentorship, and leadership. These three things are like my passions, but also they have been ways in which I have learned a lot about myself and been able to give back and pour into others. So I started off with a teaching position at Berkeley College. And I will say, if you are in grad school or planning on grad school, you will often be teaching. And so that was really where I started with my teaching experience as a TA. But then I moved into teaching. But I also knew I did not want to stay in the classroom in that way. And so my pivots were very intentional, where I moved into higher education on the administrative side. And so at Vassar and at Xavier, at Oak Ridge, at Maryville College, I was in administration. The pictures here are a few of the opportunities that I got to really work with students like yourself. And so I, at Vassar College, was over our diving into research program. And there I'm pictured with a few of them at one of their summer research symposia. And the Leadership Alliance became a part of my life when I was at Xavier. And we brought students to the Land Symposium every year. I met so many great colleagues. I miss them, but I'm glad to be connected through this virtual professional development today. And on the bottom is a picture with me and some of the summer interns at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So I listed these things to show you I've had a few transitions, okay? I also listed them to call out the one to Oak Ridge National Laboratory because I made a pivot from higher education to a space I was not familiar with, national laboratories. However, Asia and Alexandra hit it the nail on the head regarding mentors. Every pivot, every change that I made, I leaned in on my mentorship community, my mentoring network. And that is how I'm going to pivot to the next slide because community has been critical for everything that you see that I accomplish. I actually wrote this note down. It's not that we don't know this, but I love that Alexandra reminded us that you cannot do it by yourself. You have to cultivate a network. I know sometimes in research spaces, you get isolated and you're like removed from people. So now you have to be more intentional to be connected. But I love the fact that you have this space. So plug into whoever you're meeting, reach out to us. Community is going to be critical. On the left is the HERS Leadership Institute that I participated in 2017 at Bryn Mawr. It was 2 weeks residential. All of us lived together. We got really close, okay? And I have built some really long lasting colleague friendships and regular, just like these are people I can text and say, hey, what's going on? Or, you know, they got married or had kids and things like that. So we are connected in many ways. But I have leaned so much on this network throughout my leadership transitions. This was a program for women in higher ed. And many of the topics we talked about span the spectrum of, you know, maybe your aspirations in leadership to be maybe in a senior role at a university. But it talks about everything that could benefit you as a leader at large. It talks about politics, things that many of us don't want to talk about. It talks about difficult conversations. So we talked about a lot of things there, but then when I left, I had a network I could tap. One of the things that I love too is being able to give back. So on the right is Celebrate Sisters Foundation. And I realized that many of the things I was learning, what I consider late in my career, at that point, it was 2017. So I'd already graduated college at 2002. Okay. I'm now in a leadership program, which I wish I had access to some of this information much sooner. So we established a program, Celebrate Sisters, and our focus is on girls pursuing STEM pathways, and we provide mentorships and scholarships. And I wanted to be able to pour back some of those hard lessons learned in ways that, you know, I wish I had, but also to help them build community in spaces where they are often the only. And so that's another reason community is really helpful, because when you're in various fields in STEM, especially as a woman, I'll speak on my behalf, or a Black woman, I'm often the only. So you want community in different ways. So I wanted to lean in on transitions in terms of my contribution here today, and why, as you can see, and as you've already heard. Transitions are inevitable, especially when you have big goals and aspirations, which all of you obviously have. It also pulls us out of our comfort zone, and those could be your academic space when you're going from undergrad to grad. Now you're like, "Ooh, how do I do this? This is not looking like what it was. I have much more independence. Things are now up to me to drive the timeline." And then going from graduate school to your professional career, that's also another big transition. Sometimes it's professional. So if you're already working and you might be transitioning to a new job or within the same company or organization. And also you might have to move, like it might be a personal physical move where you actually have to relocate, or it might be the people of your community, the ones that you are connected to had to move. Some are pivots, like Asia mentioned. It could be change in research direction, change in your major or field of interest. And the one thing I wanted to call out is some of them aren't planned. Now, I'm not getting into the details of what that might mean, but for you, you'll know if it was on your master plan list or not. Things that we all are dealing with now: federal budget cuts, policy changes, failed research experiments might be something you're navigating. The COVID shifts that many of us had to navigate to, transition programs that had to continue. I posted this picture there because we were supposed to have a site visit from the Secretary of Energy at our national lab, and we had to do it virtually. As much as that sounds easy, that was actually a big feat because they still had to manage tours for her. And so these things happen and we have to navigate it. And I really wanted to make sure that I call these things out because we don't give ourselves credit for all the transitions that sometimes we're navigating. So I love what Asia was saying, be kind, because it's a lot sometimes and it can be really hard. So the three things I want to leave with you, if you don't remember anything else I said, because I talk fast, I said a lot, I had a lot of pictures, I hope you can take away these three things. And this is what I consider like just 3 tips on how to navigate transitions with resilience. So the first thing, and it has to do with what Asia, you kind of set me up here. It's checking what's in your power pack, a power check. And the reason I use the word power, because we all have some power. What happens is we give it away, we lose it, we expend it, and then we're burnt out. And now we're trying to figure out how to navigate, but we have to really manage this power really well. So check what you have. Sometimes that's your experiences. It's sometimes lessons from failures. Sometimes it's your network, but these are the things that you are going to need. But then you're going to have to get powered up, which is plugging into the resources that will fuel your efforts. So then you might need to reach out to a mentor. It might actually mean you need to get another training. What is going to fuel you to do what you need to do? But these things require you to slow down. And I like what Asia was saying about pause, because you have to do this reflection to be intentional in making the right decisions. But power down, I'm going to tell you, if you're moving in a direction that we've just described, where we're pursuing these degrees and these really competitive programs, you have to unplug. You have to reboot. We are not robots. We are not AI. But even a computer, even your phone, it will get glitchy if it doesn't have a power break at some point. Okay. So as much as we want to keep moving in the directions towards our goals, these things are a necessity. Powering down is a necessity. And I love that, Asia talked about different ways and being mindful of what that might look like for you. So I didn't put any prescriptive thing here, but just make sure you are unplugging, powering down, and rebooting. So I'm going to have coffee with you real quick. So with my students, they would come to my office, or tea, whichever one you prefer. And it could be herbal if you can't have caffeine, whatever. Join me for a mentoring moment. Okay. I want you to maintain healthy habits, which in your boundaries and within your attitude. Boundaries are going to be really critical. And one thing I'll just call out is that it's okay to pause and assess your capacity before making commitments, because things are going to come at you. And most of the times you feel like you're obligated. In some instances, there may be an obligation, but I still believe that communication might need to come with that around for you to take something else, what may have to shift or what timelines may have to shift. So the pause is for you to make that assessment. This is going to help your power source, because if you keep going, you will burn out. Then your attitude. There's a very cliche phrase, your attitude determines your altitude. It's really true. Like, you have a positive mindset about what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, it can take you a long way. But if you talk in a defeatist and like overwhelmed way, in the way you approach the challenge, it starts to become the way you behave. And I saw some questions that came up about imposter syndrome. Those things are ways in which you have to navigate your own mindset, and ways in which you acknowledge the environment you're in and tap your networks to help you, right? So your attitudes will be a big part of that. But then sharing what you've learned. So we had the wonderful opportunity to do that here, meaning we can share our experiences with you, but you all have experience in something that someone else doesn't have. It could be your academic, subject matter. You could tutor, but you've learned more than the person that hasn't reached the point where you are. So share that back, teach others what you've mastered. It could be technical or professional. These things boost your confidence, it sharpens your communication skills, and it increases your emotional resilience. So I hope my mentoring moment was okay for you, something to take away the little coffee chat that we had. So just like everyone else, if you'd like to stay in touch with me, there's my LinkedIn QR code. There's my email address, the website for Celebrate Sisters, and my IG, which isn't necessarily that active, but it's another way to stay connected. So I will pass it back over to Jane.
Thank you so much to you all. That was just some great advice and wisdom. And now we're going to transition to our Q&A portion. Just a reminder to students who are joining us live, you can submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. All right, so, twin sister. Okay, the tail. All right, so let's start, talking about imposter syndrome. So what are some ways that you have effectively overcome imposter syndrome, or ways that you've learned along your journey to overcome imposter syndrome? And I'm going to let you decide who would like to take that question first. Or I'll call on you. Jawanda, you look like you want to.
Well, I was just talking, so I was trying to leave room here.
Well, I think you kind of just mentioned it toward the end, so
I
was
did.
thinking of you, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I will say about imposter syndrome, and there's some conversations about like even ownership of that phrase, right? So what it is being in spaces where you don't feel like you are capable, qualified, competent, or invited or welcome. Like now you feel like an imposter, like you don't belong here. That happens all the time as you move through these different spaces. Like you're always, especially as you transition, if you pivot, you move into a new space. For me, one of the things that I learned over time is that kind of like, I don't remember how it came up, but you just have to like do some questions around what's happening. And, it was like Alexandra's list of questions. When it's like, what are your goals? What are the things you're looking to do? You have to ask certain questions about what's actually happening. And for me, sometimes it could be that I may not have what I consider the skills that other people have, because I'm looking and comparing to what they have. Sometimes it's environments in which there are practices of exclusion that you can actually feel through microaggressions and other things that are happening. But the questions you're asking are, what control do you have in those scenarios? And the other questions you're asking are, what support do I need to navigate it? And I think another question to ask is, do I have any power to change it? So some of those things, I like to talk in questions, because then you get to make the assessment regardless of the scenario. That's really like a coaching strategy. But for me, I have to do a lot of questions. And sometimes you need to talk to someone else, because in your own mind and the way you process the scenario or the situation, you can come to a conclusion, and then someone from the outside can really help you process things that you may have blind spots about, or things that you may be trying to justify that are wrong, right? And so for me, the navigation has been a journey of self-awareness, honestly. I don't think there's why I said you will experience it everywhere. I'll give you an example. I shifted from higher education administration to entrepreneurship. I was a vice president, but I still sat in rooms with entrepreneurs going, oh God, should I really be in here? Am I really qualified to do this type of thing? Because it's new. And so that moment is going to happen when you make big shifts and big changes. But what I did is I'm sitting in a place now where I'm connected to other women in entrepreneurship. It's a co-working community because I didn't have that experience that I needed a network. So those are some guiding questions to use as you work that through for yourself.
Thank you.
Um,
Anyone?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Giovanna said about talking to peers, and also add that just be open about it, because there is a taboo about the imposter syndrome, but in fact, a lot of people have it, and sharing that it does to a certain extent makes you feel vulnerable, but it's okay. And as you share, as you start, finding those people that you trust, that you can talk about those things, you find that these are the people, they also facing some of those challenges. And another thing that works for me in these situations is talking to people not in your field. That makes you realize how much you actually know. Um,
Asia?
Yeah, sure. So I will say, just to add on to what Alexandra shared, especially around talking to people who aren't in your field, I think one thing that was very helpful for me when I was feeling just new to campus, especially at UCLA, was to make friends from other departments, and I also got to see and be inspired by how they were handling their challenges. And when I think about the idea of, like Jawanda said, the concept of kind of imposter syndrome and where is it coming from? There can be some exclusionary practices that are happening in different settings, and so I think if you not like a cultural anthropologist or anything, but if you think about just cultural norms and what people may think is typical to do versus what you might think is typical, there could be differences there that just aren't talked about. And so I face that as well, but I don't think that necessarily means that I'm an imposter. It just means that my norms look like this, your norms look like that. Maybe your norms dictate what's happening here, and maybe there's something that I may not be able to see. And so I kind of almost think about it sometimes as like a cultural mismatch, more so, and then a power imbalance. And so I think, as Jawanda said, it's very important for us to know and recognize where we do have power, where we do have choice and agency. And so I think that's something that I've just continued to practice throughout, is like, what if it looked like this? And if that potential future isn't possible here, how could I go about creating some parts of that in my life to help make this a more sustainable place for me to be? Or is there another place that I'd rather be? And so I like that concept of thinking in questions as well. Those are some that will come to me as I would be navigating through different pivots.
Great, thank you. So we just received a question in the Q&A, so we'll go over to that. How do you transition out of a space while still maintaining old connections? And this question reminded me of mentorship, and how, at different times you may need different mentors. So how do you do that with grace and respect?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that one actually. My mentor from UCLA, who was my advisor for my master's report, he actually wrote me a letter of recommendation for my new PhD program. So he was someone I could trust. I think really when you form great relationships with people who are, trustworthy, they're not trying to necessarily push their agenda on you. They're supportive of you. And I guess I'll also say, I mean, I was like in my early 20s. I'm trying to figure out life. I have so much compassion for the version of me, from back then. It's like, and also, I will say something else big that happened in this, it's just innovation science, the pivots we can't control. The big data revolution happened. And so that really changed how I was thinking about my research and the way I would contribute to the data world. And so I just felt that moving to another program would better support me in being able to accomplish that vision. And so he was a great supporter, and all of my friends are fantastic. So I think think somehow I also just tend to come across great people. And so it doesn't matter if we have different school addresses now, we're in new places, we're still connected. And they are supportive and loving and caring of every version of me. When it comes to other people, maybe just classmates, so not as necessarily like kind of closest mentors or friends, it's the same thing, right? We all still had cordial relationships. You may not keep in as close touch, but for example, if I'm moving to a certain area and I know one of my classmates is there, I might reach out just to set up a coffee chat or to hear how they're doing. One person saw that I was connected with a person at a company that they were interested in, getting a job ad on LinkedIn. So he felt comfortable enough reaching out to me. I would feel comfortable doing the same thing in the future. And so I think it really all, for me, it seems like it's about how you start out. What is the type of relationship that you have? You can maintain that over time, no matter your zip code or what school or institution you're at next. So I really think about whatever you had on the front end is what you're going to take with you to that next opportunity.
Alexandra, Jawanda, do you want to add to that? Or we can go to the next question.
Asia hit it on the head, nail on the head. I love that.
Okay, so I'm going to pivot back to a question that was submitted before the session. And this is about motivation. So what are some personal tips for staying motivated when your plans don't go the way you hope they would? I understand this is a huge aspect of research, yet I'm having trouble adapting to this when it comes to limited opportunities and focusing on studies when personal life gets crazy.
Okay, I'll jump in for a second here. The question said, how do you stay motivated? Right?
Yes.
Um, I will say that things come in ebbs and flows. So the reality is sometimes you're extremely motivated and sometimes you're just not. But what I mentioned in my kind of overview of navigating transitions is about like this power check, the powering up and the power down, is sometimes you really need to assess where you are in that because the motivation might be down because you are spent. Especially when it comes to making lots of decisions. Decision fatigue is real when you're trying to navigate so many things at once. I do brain dumps sometimes just to get things out of my head because what's happening is my motivation is low because I can't think. I'm not able to process to actually make decisions. And so for me, when things don't go as planned, then I wasn't in control. So I didn't have something already mapped out to think of it. And for instance, with during the COVID era, when I was managing educational programs at the lab, that was pretty much every week. And at one point, we were still hosting internships, but the first this was when I was there. This was the first time they had ever done internships in a remote capacity. And so we would make plans for different types of events when we came back on campus, when we finally could get them back, but we were still under like some COVID restrictions. And things would happen where they would have a spike or a peak, and we would have an event planned, and they would say, hey, you need to shift. And what I found in terms of motivation, even to navigate the very quick shifts we had to make, I made a very lighthearted type of environment with my team to where we kind of like found ways to make things like, okay, here's the adventure for today. We get to figure out how to remap this program in the next hour and get a communication out in a way that keeps us moving, right? And it's like your attitude. It's like, how do you approach it and who you have around you? So the people that I had around were also like all in, like roll up the sleeves, let's do this. So who you have around you also has a lot to do with it. It could be a friend circle, it could be family, but the people around you who are also like cheerleaders because they know like, man, you're a little beat down. Let's go get some coffee or let's go for a walk. Sometimes you need the people around you to do that. But I will say, just acknowledge that when things are low, there's a reason, and you really need to check in on the whys and then kind of do that assessment of what can you do to move through it. And sometimes it's just really like a lesson. You can't change anything about it. unexpected things like that are happening to many of my colleagues when it comes to budget cuts and having to make decisions to let staff go or to let students go. They can't change that. And so the motivation in the moment is like kind of to the side of I have true emotional response to what's happening. Like I care for people and this is really impacting me and the people around me. So then finding ways to just address that and allow yourself to be there, get people around you who can like help you, move forward. But at the end of the day, sometimes the pause is I need to take a little break because that was a lot. So I just wanted to call out the motivation isn't just like steady and driving and high all the time, but you can get back. You can definitely be resilient and bounce back over time.
I love what Joanna just said, but I just wanted to add a few more things to that. So I think the things, they rarely ever go the way that we hope. It's not a linear trajectory, and real life is so far from the perfect line, and the ideal career. So I think try to shift your mind into like a positive perspective and take those unexpected twists and turns in life as opportunities instead of something, negative. Opportunities to learn, to grow, because in the moment it may seem that things, they can get worse, but over time you start to realize that there's something beautiful coming out of that, like what you had to deal with. um, it's because of how you see that, how you perceive that, and it's going to have an impact on your life. So it's up to you what kind of impact it will have. Make sure that you learn from it and you turn it into a positive thing. And um, how you think of that and how you use it, it will depend on you. So being flexible and open-minded and ready to change plans when something goes not the way you expected, it's okay. And making, I would say, timely decisions based on as much as available information as you can get. Just make sure that you collect the data, make sure you talk to people, you don't necessarily have to agree or disagree, but getting all those diverse perspectives, it helps to make those informed decisions about the changes.
Thank you. So we have a couple of more minutes, and I do want to address the question that just came in into the Q&A. We'll do a speed round. So somebody asks, what advice would you give to a business student seeking to build resilience while transitioning to a master's program in a health-related field or environmental science, particularly when they may lack a traditional science background but are motivated to address interdisciplinary challenges in these areas? So this is a huge pivot in disciplinary background.
Yeah, I could speak to that, especially having moved into different programs. I think the great thing about many fields and lines of work is that lots of interdisciplinary teams coming together are naturally going to be curious and interested in talking with folks who are kind of going in that same direction. And so, kind of reminded of what my one of my advisors told me when I was starting out my dissertation, just setting up chats to talk with people, bounce ideas around, especially when you're new to the area. They can help highlight things that you might want to check out. So one example for me is when I'm talking to people who are interested in coding and getting started with R specifically, I have some like very great like beginners resources that I will send them towards. And so I think that can help kind of narrow down and help you identify some really great on ramps. So yeah, just being open and talking with people, setting up some coffee chats, and then asking, who do you think they should, or who do they think you should speak with next? That'll help you get a quick survey, and then you can start figuring out where you want to go deeper in terms of building additional partnerships, which classes to prioritize, which skills you want to learn, and where you can build teams and partnerships where to bring on skills that you may not have time or capacity to learn, but other people can bring to help you address the problems that you're interested in solving.
Great, thank you. Okay, so with the less than 1 minute we have, I'd like to give each of us to give one little tidbit of advice to walk away with, and we've already kind of done that. One thing that has helped me a lot in my career journey and personal life And this comes from a book I read about self-compassion by Christina Neff. And she says, treat yourself how you would treat a friend. So, we tend to be really hard on ourselves and there's a lot of negative self-talk, but that's not how you would talk to a friend who is going through something. So I leave those words with you. And anybody else?
I'll say take the limits off. So a lot of times we put limits on ourselves based on assumptions or maybe areas in which, we're imagining and we can't see how it can happen. And so we've put some limits and boundaries around. But literally, I think about taking the limits off and thinking about instead of what if I wanted to do this thing, just like the student asked about business, what do I need to do to make this a smooth transition? Not, oh my gosh, I don't have this training, I don't have these degrees, I don't have these courses, so I probably can't this and I probably can't that. And that's default. That's my default, I'll at least say. Many of us, especially if you're in STEM, because it's like you're trained to have this like logical process. And as Alexandra said, the linear thing doesn't work. So take the limits off and be more exploratory.
I love that. Thank you. All right. Asia, yep.
Yeah, I'll share. Have trusted and safe spaces to process the difficult things, the negativity, the sadness. I will say there was a period for me where therapy sessions just involved crying for most of the session, and that's just where I was. And so we talk about motivation and things that it just may not come, or you may be taking the tiniest baby steps. But I will say that it's important to just have support through those processes, like the big transitions, the highs and the lows. And so really just continue to think about what your resources are. And so I know for me personally, on campus therapy was phenomenal, as well as some off-campus options in LA by therapists in training. They were very affordable while I was in school. And so that is something I'm so glad was also a part of my journey while I was kind of becoming and figuring out who I was. Learning great things, learning how much I love teaching, but also learning about myself personally and what I needed to thrive, and being able to put all of that together.
That's awesome advice. Thank you.
Yeah, just quickly wanted to add that be kind to yourself and take breaks when needed, and it's okay to take them. That gives you time to process things and move on.
Definitely. We all need breaks. Okay, well, thank you so much to our wonderful speakers. I'm so thrilled and honored and that you joined us today and really appreciate all your advice and insights. And I know our students also will walk away with a lot of great tidbits today. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of the day.